Now, what if I told you that 100% of all your problems was actually due to one single problem? And what if I told you that that problem was all in your head? Now, I'm sure you might be like, this is all woo-woo crap, but hear me out for a second. Now, this problem is so insidious in the sense that we do not even know it's there. And that's what makes it the greatest kind of enemy, because you do not see it coming. And anytime you try to make progress, it takes you back. Now, for those of you who haven't seen my last video, I'm going to tell you what this problem is. Now, that problem is your limiting beliefs. Now, I'm not really going to go deep into detail in what I actually explained in the last video. I talked about how limiting beliefs actually originated and how finding the sources and the origins of your limiting beliefs can actually help you to find the solution on how you can overcome those limiting beliefs. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about specifically how you can overcome your limiting beliefs. Now, let's get into the video. Now, during the course of my research, I discovered 4 fundamental ways on how you can overcome basically any limiting belief that you're currently facing. Now, the first is to identify. Now, like I said before, the worst enemy you can ever have is the enemy that you do not see coming. Now, most of us live in a world that is laced with distractions, and we actually go about our day-to-day lives not really sitting down to think about what constitutes this day-to-day life, because there's actually a whole lot of things that happens in the background that we do not really tend to see in the surface. Now, when you can clearly define a problem, that problem is actually already half solved. Now, how do you identify your limiting beliefs? Now, one of the easiest ways that you can identify a limiting belief is to actually sit down and think to yourself on the things that you are not really trying or the things that you're not really attempting. Now, if you hate public speaking, now that's actually a good place to start. Now, this is because every single behavior or action that we do or don't do is backed by a belief. And if for some reason, every time you are in a position or in a situation where you have to public speak or talk publicly and you do not do it, that action or behavior is backed by a belief. And same with a lot of things that you do and also don't do. In my previous video, I made mention of a belief that I had about studying. I didn't like to study more than 3 to 4 hours in a day. And personally, that was a huge limiting belief. And that action was due to a limiting belief which I had to break, and actually went in detail on how I overcame that belief. Now, another way that you can overcome your limiting beliefs is recognize that it's just a belief. Now, I want you to understand something. I'm going to show you a quick definition of what a limiting belief actually is, and I want you to understand why recognizing this is really important. A limiting belief is a thought or state of mind that you think is the absolute truth and stops you and others from doing certain things. I want you to underline the word absolute truth. Now, most times, the reasons why our beliefs are still preeminent is because we are holding on to something false and thinking is the truth. Now, when you do not recognize that your limiting beliefs are just beliefs, basically opinions that was formed maybe when we were 6 years old, and we actually carry the ideas of a 6-year-old as law even as a 25 or a 40-year-old. And that is where you have to recognize that whatever limiting beliefs that you have actually not absolute truth or how reality really works. And that leads us to the next point, which is dissecting. Now, how do you dissect your limiting beliefs? Now, really fundamental way that you can dissect your limiting beliefs is with something called the Socratic questioning method. The first question: is there any evidence for this belief? Now, if I believe that the world is flat and I tailor all my actions according to that belief, actions like I'm never going to fly to some certain parts of the world because I believe the world is flat. A good way to dissect this belief is to find evidence for this belief. And if we follow the trend of science, I mean, all evidence actually tends to refute this belief, because currently we have high resolution images of our planet as it is, and by all indications, it's 100% not flat. And when we find evidence that actually refutes this belief that we might have, that is a major step to actually break its hold on us. Now, another Socratic question is, could you be making assumptions on this? Now, sometimes we could actually see something and without prior evidence assume something. Like, let's say I see a guy that is big and happens to be tall, and then I assume this person is stronger than me. Now, if from that assumption I base a belief, it's actually just an assumption, because the fact that this person looks tall and he looks fat, that doesn't exactly mean, okay, sorry, not fat, plump, that actually doesn't mean that this person could actually be stronger than me. It's just an assumption based on some shallow evidence which is actually laid before me. Well, because in fact, that person could actually be suffering from obesity, and the person happens to be tall, and most of the things I see on that person's arms are just basically fat. And I mean, if I happen to be going to the gym and I have more of lean muscle, I would actually be stronger than this person. Now, if we reverse engineer this process, we can actually see our beliefs for what they really are. just mere assumptions. The next way that we can actually overcome our self-limiting beliefs is by assessing what we are leaving out of the table. Now, if you have a limiting belief of shyness, when you really sit down to assess what you potentially leave out of the table when you remain in this state of being shy, you actually exclude yourself from a lot of opportunities that would come if you would just speak up. It can actually help you to fuel your desire to take the next step. There's actually a quote I heard one time: there are no vacuums in nature. Now, what does this mean? There are no spaces in nature. If for some reason a tree was growing in my backyard and I decide to cut that tree and make that land bare, now for the first few days that space is going to look empty, but over time nature always has a way of filling that space back up. Maybe I could come back and see mushrooms, moss, or green plants or grasses growing on that same spot. Now the same goes with your mind. When you take the time to remove a negative belief, before you can actually successfully do away with that negative belief, you need to come up with a different empowering belief. Now this is almost like the analogy that Jesus Christ made in the Bible, where he was telling a story about a demon that was exorcised from a person. Now he said that after the demon left the person, the demon went to dry land and was looking for a place to rest. And then after some time, the demon thought to himself, I'm gonna go back to the place where I was taken out from or exorcised and see if there's still space for me there. And when the demon returned, he saw that there was actually space and there was nothing there. The room was quite looking nice, and he entered back in. And he didn't just come alone. He came with 7 demons worse than him. And the final state of the person was actually worse than the initial state of that person. Okay, now this is an extreme example, but nature has no vacuums. For every limiting belief that you get rid of, you need to have a viable replacement of an empowering belief to actually help you do the complete opposite behavior. Because if there's no empowering belief, you could actually end up doing worse than what you initially even stopped yourself from doing. Now, there are many things that can actually lead you back to your previous self-limiting beliefs. And if you watched the previous video, I actually made mention of the origins of self-limiting beliefs. And to overcome your limiting beliefs, there are 5 major blocks that you really need to work on to completely overcome your self-limiting beliefs. And the first one are your friends. Now, there's a particular saying that says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Now, if you have a limiting belief that you want broken, and the friends that you have around you are helming that same belief that you want to break, it's going to be almost impossible to actually break from that behavior, that belief stems from, because you are basically an average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. And when you have the right people around you, it's just like what the Bible says: iron sharpened iron, so does a man sharpen the countenance of his friend. The next sphere that we can actually work on our limiting beliefs is our family. Now, believe it or not, your family actually will have a fundamental impact on how you see the world. And if for some reason you're trying to break a limiting belief and your family do not want you to break that limiting belief, and you actually still deeply care about what they think about you, it's going to be very difficult to actually break said belief, because at some point you need to have developed a mind of your own. And if you are still being mind controlled to do something negative from the people who are your family, I believe the earlier you develop tough skin to the opinions of those around you, especially your family members, it's going to be a whole lot difficult for you to actually overcome that limiting belief. Because if you do not have a tough enough skin to actually do what you feel is right without really desperately seeking approval, then you can truly overcome. I mean, that's if the limiting belief is actually from the origins of your family. Now, I'm not saying be rebellious or anything, but if a negative trait is being propagated by your family and you feel that trait is a wrong thing to do, I think there comes a time where you have to think for yourself and do what you think is right for you. Now, the next way that we can do the work to overcome is when we control what we expose ourselves to. Now, this is because in the 21st century, we are basically in the information age. Now, I'm sure there's some of you who you are actually quite closer to some online creator than you are to your relative or your sibling. Now, we're in a period of time where human connection has been basically multiplied to the point that people who are miles away, we can literally connect with them like they are just beside us, like our close friends. Now, that's the effect of what you see and what you watch and what you hear, because they actually influence you as much as your friends. This is quite similar to your friends, because who you listen to most of the time influence your thought patterns and your behavior patterns. And if you happen to listen to an online person who happens to propagate a belief that is quite negative and does not really serve you in the future, and you still continue listening to that person, inevitably you are what you consume. And I want that to sink in. You are what you consume. If you consume junk, you produce junk. If you consume good stuff, I mean, you inevitably yield good stuff by what you say, how you act, and how you interact. Well, that rhymes actually. What you say, what you act, and how you interact. Wow. I think I'll make a good rapper. Now, another way that we can actually do the work is how we talk. Now, how you talk actually, in a really subtle sense, in a really subtle way, exposes who you really are inside. And if you can reverse engineer this process by actually changing what you say about yourself, especially about yourself, because the most important voice you will ever hear in your entire life is the voice that you use to speak to yourself. And most times, we actually use this voice against us. We call ourselves stupid. We call ourselves unintelligent, we call ourselves dumb with our own voices. And this can actually greatly impact you subconsciously without you even knowing it. And if you want to change a belief, a good way to start is by changing what you say to yourself. At the end of the day, what you believe in, either subconsciously or consciously, will either make you or break you. Now, the choice I have for you today is, do you like the behaviors that you continuously find yourself doing? And if you don't, I want you to quickly question the beliefs behind what you do and what you don't do. And guys, if you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the algorithm. And guys, if you like this video, I think you're gonna love this video about 5 ways you hurt your self-discipline. Honestly, there are many ways that you could actually be messing yourself up in your self-discipline that you don't even know about. And remember to always keep it real. Bye guys. Why are you still watching? Click on the video, click on it now.